Hot button.
Everybody been doing since the last time we recorded.
Completely turned my life around.
Found Jesus.
Yeah, no, well, found Xenu. Got my thetan levels in check.
Are you even allowed to talk about that shit?
Oh, fuck.
When
Tom
did he
Cruise, please don't kill me.
When he created Tom Cruise's fell through the ceiling, broke off his neck and shot everybody in the room. Fucking left. I like the idea that he's like the secret agent of Scientology.
Yeah.
That's why he does all his own stunts, because he's still out there doing that shit for real.
Yeah, Mission Impossible's a documentary. They just changed all of the bad people from non-Scientologists into terrorists.
Yeah.
I saw this movie. Said, "Believe you if that was the plot." I don't even remember. I think it's
I'm pretty sure it's about Scientology.
It's about bad guys trying to do something bad, and then the good guy stops them.
And that's movie reviews by Randall.
All right, guys. We are back with part 2 of our discussion of video games as free speech. This is Hot Button. I'm Randall Beatrice here with Chris Anantuano and host Austin Blakesley.
Well, I didn't even get to
You
talk
didn't say hi.
about
Did I
free
talk-
speech. I mean, just, yeah, fucking gone right
censorship.
Where we left off in our last episode, I believe there was a big, muscly Austrian actor man somehow working in
which one?
politics that was about to start a pretty major
Hitler?
fight with our podcast favorite pastime.
My favorite pastime is sewing, by the way. Don't put words in my mouth.
I said the podcast as an entity.
Okay, did we vote on that? God, talk about
voting for
failing democracies. Oh, Christ.
damn.
The Supreme Court of Hot Button.
For those that didn't get any, or who doesn't understand any of this,
I want to be Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
please go back and listen to our previous episode first. But now that you guys are done making fun of me, why don't you take the wheel?
Nah, keep talking. I want to make fun of you more. Yeah, well, we'll get this started. All right, yeah.
People are going to think we're high.
You're not? Hold on. Cut this out, Jason. I'm going to vape into the mic.
Fuck you.
No, now we have to leave that
Now
in.
you got to leave it in.
Yeah.
Okay, so said big muscly Austrian guy, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the governor.
Oh, that's who we were talking about.
Yeah, he had appealed.
Dude, I don't think we ever once referred to him in the last episode as Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I think I said the governor Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, okay.
At one point. I didn't feel like typing the name Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, but then you asked how to spell governor.
Yeah, okay. Another thing, governor can't spell that word.
That word makes no sense.
Found that out?
Yeah.
I can give it a shot.
Okay, go for it.
G-O-V
Got it so far.
E-O-N-O-U-R-N-E.
Dude, nailed it.
Now spell Schwarzenegger.
No.
Okay, so this appeal started the case of Schwarzenegger versus the Entertainment Merchants Association. And I have a side note written here, and this is going to be important because we talked a lot in the last episode about victories for video games, but I think I made a comment in the beginning of the last part about how this is not a victory and this is going to come up again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A week before the case for video games began, a law was overturned that sought restrictions on showing animal cruelty. But again, because the rules were too broad, it was turned down. So keep that in mind, that this isn't necessarily proof that violent video games are 100% ethical and in the clear, and that they don't harm kids, and that the Supreme Court believes that they don't. It's just that the way that California worded the law was way too hard to pin down under the First Amendment.
Hatred is totally ethical.
So you're saying there's a law about abusing animals.
It was about dogfighting specifically.
I know. I was trying to lighten it up.
I know.
And they couldn't get it through because it was worded weird.
Because it's free speech. It was about, like, filming dogfighting. Yeah. So that's why... that's a rough topic, pun not intended.
A couple years ago...
I'm sorry.
A while back, I made a fake.
I do work for a dog.
I made a fake video game poster
dog
for Michael
pet
Vick's
sitting
Dog
company.
Fighter, and I just photoshopped Michael Vick into a bunch of Ace Combat photos.
Oh, God. I wanted to bring that up because it is a hard topic to talk about, but that just shows that, like, Supreme Court's real into the Constitution. They are fully supportive of video games either.
Yeah,
They're just
right.
really against people trying to edit the law of free speech, edit the First Amendment, because it was already ratified once, and that's the max number of times you can apparently ratify an amendment, so they don't want to do it again. But back to video games.
All right.
So this...
Forget that I work around animals all
I
day,
know, and
especially dogs.
I do not support that law.
No, of course. Yeah.
But I just wanted
We're
to
all
point that out because
pet lovers here.
that is, like, by circumstance, the most extreme example of the fact that, like,
Right.
we're not in the clear here.
Yeah.
Do either of you, Randy might because it's in our notes, but do either of you know what an amicus brief is? I'm going to get into a lot of legal terminology right now.
Can you spell it?
AMI.
No, not you. You're looking at it.
I have no what.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
All right, ABACAS, easy. It's a math box thing, right? Abacus.
Yeah. All right. So an abacus brief is essentially when you're going into a court hearing like this, a bunch of people, they won't be called to the stand because that's not the way the Supreme Court really works.
Okay.
But experts will kind of just like volunteer their own information for
Right,
whatever
yeah.
side that they are siding with in the case. Keep in mind, this is the Entertainment Merchants Association that is fighting this, not the ESA.
Quite a few groups against.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's all about making fucking money for them.
Yeah,
Somebody called the Progress and Freedom Foundation, the
positive.
Electronic Frontier Foundation, various game companies, including
Of
the
course.
likes of Blizzard, Activision, Take-Two, Microsoft, Bethesda.
Yeah, people who are in the ESA.
Yeah, and the ESA themselves, because
Right.
again, they were helping out the defense for the EMA, but the EMA was the one fighting the law.
Right. Yeah.
Here's the interesting one. We have every other media group came in support of video games because
Yeah, I saw
this
this.
is a very slippery slope law where it's like if you were allowed to
You go after
regulate
them,
violent
then-
video games,
yeah.
they're going to come after violent music or violent TV or violent movies. So they had the backing of the National Association of Broadcasters, as well as the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America, the RIAA, the Recording Industry
Yeah,
Association
there's
of
a music
America,
one.
and the National Cable and Telecommunications Association. So that was...
Yeah.
Damn, the
They got-
fighters are lining up.
They got live TV, they got recorded TV, they got movies, and they got music.
What about magazines?
What year was this? 2010? They're dead.
It's a live filling medium organization.
The Newspaper Association. And then we have a bunch of human rights associations. We have the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union. We have the National Coalition Against Censorship and the National Youth Rights Association. Now, keep in mind, they were going against the state of California, but not every state in the union supported this. A lot of states didn't.
Which states, by the way?
That's what I'm pulling up right
Okay,
now.
Yeah. I was
The other
curious.
states that were in support of the video game industry were Rhode Island, Arkansas, Georgia, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Utah, Washington, and Puerto Rico, which isn't a state, but
In support,
in support
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
video game industry.
Nebraska, huge support of video game industry.
Yeah. But again, the amicus brief thing goes both ways. So you also have not nearly as many, but a couple people supporting the state of California here. So you have 11 other states, which I couldn't find a list of this, but it includes the states of the senators that tried to make that law before. So Hillary Clinton was a senator for New York. So New York was one of them. You have South Dakota. Joe Lieberman was Connecticut?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
so Connecticut.
And who the other guy was Wisconsin. I remember those. were the-
Wisconsin, South Dakota, Indiana were a couple of those. You have the American Academy of Pediatrics,
Interesting.
the California Psychological Association, and two things that I could not really find what they are, but the Common Sense Media Group.
That I've heard before. The other one I had no idea.
And the Eagle Forum.
And does a bird watching association or like Boy Scouts or something?
I don't know, that
Might
sounds
be Boy
righty
Scouts.
as fuck.
It does. I'm going to Google it.
I'm sure there's symbolism in the American
The
flag. in it.
Eagle Forum. Leading the pro-family movement since 1972. Not clicking that link. Okay, so, but here's an interesting side note. The court system, how shall I say, moves a little slowly. So
Slow as fuck.
this actually came up in our CS:GO episode
Did it?
when
Okay.
Chris, our guest Chris, mentioned the
Yeah, not you.
not
Fuck
you.
off.
Our guest Chris mentioned how New Jersey was trying to overturn some anti-gambling laws, and it started out as Christie versus whatever. And by the time Chris Christie was out of office, they changed the name. That happened here again.
Okay.
So the Terminator was removed from, well, not removed from office, but his term was up, and he was replaced by former Governor Jerry Brown.
Dead Kennedys.
Famous from the Dead Kennedy song, yeah.
Yeah, that's all I think about.
That's all I could think about when I was looking him up.
Then, we make fun of Arnold a lot, but we can balance it out with Christie jokes till the sun came up.
Oh, yeah. That dude sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the case was renamed from Schwarzenegger versus the Entertainment Media
This
Association.
is around the time that I
to
started to hear about it.
Brown versus the Entertainment
Yes,
Merchants
yeah.
Association. And that was in mid-2010. And then here's where we're going to get to the meat of this whole thing. The oral arguments for the case were held on November 2nd, 2010. Like I said in our previous episode at the end, there is an absolutely adorable video that includes some dogs pretending to be Supreme Court justices. And if you want to look up that, you can listen to these whole oral arguments. But it is only an hour, but they go over a lot. And I'm going to try to sum up all of their points as best I can, because that's kind of the meat of the argument here. The thing started off right up front with the worry that this law was trying to change the First Amendment. And like I said, that this was a slippery slope where, games have been around in prominence since the 80s.
Yeah.
So they're relatively new, but it's like
You're talking about games at home and stuff.
yeah, people have tried to do this before for comic books and movies and TV and music. Justice Antonin Scalia, who a lot of people don't like because he's very right-wing, but he
A name like Justice.
yeah, well, that's his,
So lowbrow.
Go on.
sorry, I just wanted to sit in that joke for a little bit. So he compared it to Grimm's fairy tales and said that, like, we let kids read Grimm's fairy tales. Those are pretty violent, but we let kids read it because they have historical significance. The historical significance is the only thing separating them. Then why take that right away from video games?
Agreed.
Yeah. And I think I brought this up. I don't remember if it was on the podcast or in a private conversation, so I'll just bring it up again. This is when California tried to pull out their argument that video games as an interactive medium, that's what separates them from movies, from television, from books, from comic books. The fact that you are not watching
You're participating.
killing, you're participating in the killing.
The Manhunt 2 argument.
Yes.
Nice.
Right. But I said this to our sound guy, Jason, last night. But, like, the thing is that, like, I think there's an argument to be made on the other side of that, which is just, like, if you're playing a video games are interesting because most of the people that play video games don't know the people that are making those games, right? So if a game like Grand Theft Auto tells you to go out and kill the police,
No justice, no peace.
when you're getting to the second half of my argument, you'll just be like, oh, this is part of the game, I'm doing it. A kid might think, like, yeah, maybe fuck the government, I should do this. Yeah, but, like, it's much worse for a famous actor or musician they look up to telling them to
Impressionable figures.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think the interactivity of the thing is
What if
really the
Mario
issue.
told them to kill the police? Then we might be getting somewhere.
It does. You just have to play Mario Brothers backwards. My jokes are getting worse.
Oh, I thought that was pretty good.
Thanks.
The games are compared to cartoons, and one of the justices says that even when they have no value, that they are still entertainment. I think she says, like,
Ren and
they're not
Stimpy.
entertaining. Yeah, they're not entertaining to me, but they're entertaining to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And that the argument for, like, obscenity being like, well, it has no artistic value.
That has been going on since the...
It's like you're trying to
Dawn of
argue
art.
that violence doesn't have artistic value, but if violence doesn't have artistic value, then you don't have a problem with video games, you got a problem with everything.
Yeah.
There's a lot of songs about violence, there's a lot of movies and television shows that contain plenty of violence. There's an episode of 24 where a nuke goes off and kills like 8 million people or whatever.
A nuke goes off in 24?
Yeah.
What was it like writing the rest of that show after that?
I don't know, there's still a bunch of country left. to stop the terrorists from destroying.
Also, that show's trash.
I've never seen it. It sounds like he lost, so why would I watch?
No, he saved the rest of everybody.
Oh, where did the nuke go off?
I don't know, California.
It's hitting close to our home with our story here.
Then California tries to claim that, or the justices bring up the fact that free speech, because they keep comparing it to the obscenity thing.
Yeah.
And they're saying that free speech does stop violent speech, right? Like you can't.
Yeah, there's
your free
you can't
speech rights
incite genocide.
Yeah, your free speech rights are violated if you incite violence. Mm-hmm. And they're saying that if you're trying to
make personal threats.
But they're saying that if you're trying to argue that video games are out there trying to incite violence to stop their free speech, then there's absolutely no reason, and this is such an old person thing to say, there's absolutely no reason you shouldn't ban rap music too.
That sounds like what a lot of people would say that don't understand anything about rap music
or
the culture surrounding.
That's what I'm saying. It's a very old person thing to say.
Yeah, you're right.
This is the justices that were saying that, or
or punk music. Jeez.
I mean, it's tough because you have people who are supposed to be like philosophically arguing over the laws that should control our society,
and there's also characters,
and they're disconnected from society.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know how the Supreme Court works, by the way, like I said, it's not like a typical courtroom where it's like the jury is the 9 Supreme Court justices. And there's no witnesses to examine or cross-examine like a typical courtroom. The way it works is that basically one lawyer for the state of California gets up there first, and he has 30 minutes to make his point. And while he's talking, the justices keep just cutting him off and being like, well, but this part doesn't make sense to me, and then he has to explain it. And then when his time is up, it switches over to the EMA's lawyer, and then he does the same thing.
Okay.
So this is a lot of him being like, well...
Sounds tedious.
I think that we have to support parents in their helping them make the decisions for their kids. And then, like, they'll get cut off and be like, well, why do you think that, like, the ESRB is not doing a good enough job? And then the guy will explain it, and then, like, 3 words in, they'll cut him off again. Like, it's just... It's a bunch of old people just like cutting off lawyers is the whole thing. And they get into a lot of different arguments about the age that is required for the law, because the law states that violent video games can't be sold to anybody under 18.
That's what we mentioned in the last episode.
But the ESRB says that M-rated games are for people 17 and older. So it's like, where do you similarly to
that adults only rating.
Similarly to drinking and alcohol and driving, it's like
everyone knows 1 year makes all the difference.
Yeah, it's like you're
blanket over it as many people as possible.
What changes when your birthday happens and you turn from 17 to 18 that suddenly makes you able to deal with this
buy
stuff?
A gun.
Yeah, like I don't want to speak for you guys, but I feel pretty safe in saying that we all played very violent video games when we were way too young.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I was gonna say I've drawn way too many penises in video games that allow you to draw things. I'm probably still not old enough to be able to play video games.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time in PictoChat, huh?
Sending dick pics of the early 2000s, PictoChat. But yeah, they make a lot of arguments that it should be up to the parents to when their kids are ready.
Yeah.
But the law isn't trying to stop kids under 18 from playing games. It's trying to make it so that it's illegal for them to get access to them without their parents buying it for them. If you want your kid to smoke cigarettes, it is not illegal for somebody under the age of whatever the smoking age is to smoke the cigarettes. It's illegal for them to buy it.
Right.
So their parents have to buy it for them if they want it to be okay. It's the same with alcohol.
No, because it is illegal to drink alcohol.
It is illegal to drink alcohol.
Underage.
Cigarettes.
Oh yeah,
it's not.
cigarettes is not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird because
it is also not illegal to watch porn, but it is illegal to buy porn.
That's true. It's very weird to even think about this. What year is this? Where are we? 2010?
2010.
Would you say that this is still before the boom for purchasing games digitally, or is this around the time that started? I know it was possible, but it's just funny to think about it in this context.
I'd say maybe on computers probably.
It was possible, but I would say Steam was around here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think the real big console boom didn't even start until a couple of years ago.
It's just funny to think that it's just if a kid wanted to get an M-rated game, it's pretty fucking easy, but
yeah,
not in a store physically.
And I
just mean digitally. But that's the same thing of websites that ask you what age you are.
So that's interesting because I wanted to ask you a question for my next point, which is that
But that's all up to a parent to regulate internet usage. and
Obviously,
stuff as
like
a
Chris
kid.
said, a lot of these justices are not up to date with society.
Yeah.
So the way they prep them for this shit is they show them videos,
Yeah.
which we've talked
Which
about.
they still do.
Which will come up
Yeah,
later,
that will.
but these videos are so heavily weighted. The video that got shown to the Supreme Court was a 5-minute video of somebody playing Postal 2.
What
Right.
year is it?
Which is just
that game's from like 1997.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like the absolute worst example.
and also, I don't think you'd get the satirical tone of that game in a 5
No.
out of context clip, considering
They talk a lot about how you're like urinating on people and setting them on fire, and it is supposed to be very satirical,
Yeah.
but it does not come across. if
Yeah,
you-
that
No,
game
it's
is a
just
celebration of
Yeah.
violence. Also, the funny thing is, like, I don't know if you guys have played Postal 2, but the
I have not, because it's a bad video.
It is a
game.
bad video game. All the Postal games are bad, but
Yeah.
I think it's funnier to explain than to play. But all of the missions you get are extremely boring and arbitrary. It's
Yeah.
like go to the supermarket and get milk, but then like on the way there you can like run around with a machine gun in town and kill as many people as you want. The game doesn't punish you, but it's just like GTA if it was like just really blunt and dumb. Like it's
Yeah.
like, but like that. But it's funny just because it's like the contrasting nature of the objectives compared to how you can do them is what makes that game have the image that it, you know.
Yeah.
It sounds like I'm defending Postal 2 and I'm not because it's a bad game,
But-
but I am defending its right to exist. I
But-
thought that game was funny when it came out.
But credit to
2003, all right. I think that first one came out in the 90s.
I mean, that would have been 2 years before the original law was pitched.
right.
Yeah.
I think the original Postal was like isometric.
But was Postal
That was
2
90s.
a console game?
no, that
was
was still
PC.
just PC.
Yeah.
That was the one with Gary Coleman in it.
Yep. Oh, God. But to the Supreme Court justices' credit, they immediately get into an argument that they're like, if what you're showing us right here is like the baseline, then we have a much
Problem.
bigger issue.
Oh, right, yeah.
But they're like,
this is a repetition of all games right now.
Yeah, you clearly found the worst of the worst.
Never mind that the top selling game of the year Postal 2 came out was probably Madden, you know, like it's
Yeah. I would vote that game is bad for kids.
yeah.
Or the
It's
NFL
it's
in
an
general.
unfair portrayal of how you don't get brain damage from playing football over and over again.
Yeah.
No, they swept it under the rug, dude. No
They
proof.
fired Bob Costas. You hear about that?
Really?
Yeah. Bob Costas, when CBS hosted the Super Bowl, he like did one of his things where they cut to camera and he went off book and was like, "Football costs us concussions. We should talk about it." And then he got fired. That
Holy
that
shit.
just came out like this week,
Fucking.
which is beginning of February 2019 for whenever this comes out. But
Yeah. Fuck.
I hate football.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
but-
I mean, I don't think
I'm not-
anybody
I'm-
who
yeah.
listens to our show is going to disagree.
this is where the kind of the meat of the argument is, which is just like the vagueness, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're like, obviously, this Postal 2 thing would be considered violent under this
Yeah.
thing. Like, if
Yeah.
this isn't violence, then I don't know what is,
Yeah.
right? But like, where we don't need to see the most violent game ever.
No.
We need to see what the cutoff down here is. We need
Yeah,
to see
yeah.
where is just enough crossing
Postal
the
2
line.
was the I think Running at Scissors was the people that made it.
Yeah.
That was the whole point. That game was literally created to push the envelope. Like
Yeah.
if you read the box or like the site, it was like the whole point was to
Yeah.
like was to be against political correctness of 2003 or whatever as much as possible.
Yeah, so this is where they're like, you need clear-cut laws. Justice Scalia comes on and is basically like, look, I don't know a lot about how video games are made, clearly, because I'm old, but like, I have to assume that just like any other industry, it takes time and it takes money and it takes people.
Yeah.
You can't sit here and have hundreds of people spend thousands of hours making a video game only to go to some organization and be like, this isn't good enough to start over. Because that's bad for capitalism, right?
Meanwhile,
Yeah.
Hostel and the 35 Saw movies are tearing up the box office.
Yeah.
Like, they're not
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But that's like, showing a clip from one of those and being like, we got to do something about movies.
And the only argument the guy from California has to come back with is like, they should know what's too violent.
And
And it's like,
Who?
the people who make games.
I know what I'm saying.
But-
Like, who
Yeah.
should know? What?
Yeah, like they should know when they're being too violent. And what?
Yeah.
No.
fuck off.
You can't enforce the law and just be like, I'm not going to tell you what's illegal, but if you bring me something that's illegal, I'm going to fine you and shut you down. It's like, well, like you said, the only way to get around that is to just keep making Tetris.
Yeah.
Because like Tetris can't possibly be violent.
Somebody
And-
will come after Tetris at one point, then I'll be screwed.
So we go back to our variation on the Miller test from earlier, where he
that's
says,
solid system.
Yeah,
Every
where he's-
Tetris piece that disappears just reappears like in a landfill. It's just filling up somewhere.
You ever notice how the line kind of looks like a dick?
It's like the
Gotta take all the
it's like
Tetris away.
The Monster Factory video with the McElroys, where he gets the gun in Saints Row that evaporates people, and he's just like, I'm sending them all to Dairy Queen. 'Cause he tries to do a non-violent version of Saints Row, and then it's impossible, so he just gets that gun and says he's transporting everybody to Dairy Queen. Yeah. But we come back to our Miller test thing: maiming, killing, torturing, and sexual violence. And then that comes back to the argument that I presented in our last episode, was just like, maiming, okay, sure. Torturing, yeah, that scene in GTA 5 was pretty rough.
Yeah. Call of Duty had that torture sequence
Yeah.
in it. You put the glass in the guy's mouth and then
Yep.
punch him.
Sexual violence,
That
obviously,
mission was
very
really
hard to
good,
watch.
though.
Metal Gear Solid, thanks.
Killing, though.
That is the biggest.
What is killing? Is Sonic killing people? Or are you
Sonic's
just
killing a lot of people.
Yeah.
Anyways.
He's killing robots, though.
Oh, I didn't mean in the game.
He's just killing my will to live. He didn't kill me. You know,
Is Mario killing people?
Is Zelda killing people with his sword?
He's got a sword.
I'd say yes.
It's Mr. Metroid
Or is
killing
he just
people.
gardening?
Is Metroid himself killing people? Like, obviously, in Call of Duty, you're killing people because you shoot them in the head and then an arterial spray of blood pops out. Obviously, you're killing people then. But, you know, where do you draw the line?
There's no blood in Overwatch, so that
No, there's
game
blood.
There is really.
Yeah, that's all right. It's very interesting the way that the ESRB decides the difference between blood and gore.
Yeah.
And gore doesn't always have to mean dismemberment. Gore just means that if the blood, like, do you ever play GoldenEye and then Perfect Dark?
Yeah.
And in GoldenEye, the blood sticks to their character model, but in Perfect Dark, it splats onto the walls and pours out onto the floor. And that was the only thing separating that, like, those two ratings.
The
So
T and M?
Yeah, so it's funny that Overwatch has blood, but it's very small little, like,
Okay,
like
I'll have
when
to
you-
look, yeah.
It's you can barely see it ever. But it doesn't,
Yeah.
Overwatch, you're using guns.
Yeah. Guns.
Those people are dying. There's a character that's
Fortnite.
specifically meant to resurrect people from death. Like, clearly, but is that covered? Is that a violent video game? Because that game's rated teen,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yes.
Overwatch?
Yeah, Overwatch
Yeah.
is rated teen.
So,
There's no language. The violence is.
There's some
cartoony.
language, but they just say hell and damn and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like Simpsons cursing rules.
yeah. California's argument here is that they would
There's
form
same-sex relationships in that game.
they would form a jury that would review these games and determine what was too violent.
Like.
But again,
the ESRB.
yeah, but again, Justice Scalia is just like, you can't bring these games before a jury. You need to have rules that people can follow while they're making the games, because it takes a long time and a lot of money. And also, like, we have a jury that rates
For the
these
first
games.
time
Yeah.
ever, let's thank fuck for a righty's view of capitalism.
I know, right?
Hot button.
That's what I'm saying. This
Oh,
is so
God.
weird, because this is like the most bipartisan issue, because everybody on every side is like, you know,
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just very curious. I looked up Overwatch. It says rated teen for blood, violence, and use of tobacco.
yeah, because McCree has a cigar.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
I was like, I couldn't remember. I was like, who smokes in that game?
But
I was trying to think of a character who wouldn't smoke and just be like, yeah, they do.
The hamster.
Yeah.
like, you need,
Arrows go through people sometimes.
it's like you want to form this jury that's going to determine whether these games are too violent, but the ESRB already exists. Are you saying they're not doing their job?
Essentially,
Because
yeah,
they're doing a
that's
better job than
Than
the MPA,
anyone else,
the MPA
yeah.
and the RIAA. So, like, are you
And
saying
also,
they're
that's
not
a
doing
different
good
case
jobs?
in general. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's not what you're here to
All
fight.
the RIA does is listen to an album and they say fuck once and they're like, okay, and then they say it twice and they're like, "Duh!" and they put a sticker on it. And that's what the MPAA does for movies from the PG-13 to R as well.
So the justices ask the guy from California, the guy defending the city of California, like, why not just make the M-rated games that the ESRB rates the illegal ones? And the guy comes back with, like, well, some of those are too violent. Some of them are not violent enough. Some M-rated games have artistic merit and so wouldn't be covered by this, and some of them don't. Which is where this whole thing just like falls apart.
It's almost like that, the R rating as well.
Yeah. Well, it's like, who's to say that, like,
I mean, all games have
I don't know
art.
what
You
they're-
need assets.
I don't know what this is rated, but like something like This War of Mine Is that M?
Yeah, I think it is M. Yeah.
Okay. Isn't there expansion just like kids dying instead of
I
adults
think
or
so.
something like that? Isn't it called This
Because
War of Mine, the
did
little
This
ones?
War is Mine come
Yeah.
to consoles?
Yes.
Then that was rated. That
Yes.
probably was M. Because I know Papers, Please never left PC.
It's like, obviously that has artistic merit because it's trying to teach a lesson,
Yeah.
right? About like the horrors of war from the people that aren't fighting.
I mentioned
Yeah.
this on a previous episode that Gone Home is rated M.
Yeah.
Which is a game that would, I think,
That's
a
because
lot.
of the gay.
I think a lot of people that would get like value, like the protagonist is a 16-year-old.
But who's to say that GTA doesn't have artistic merit? It's
It
all,
does.
It's all
yeah,
satire.
it is. Yeah,
It is,
like
dude.
It's violent as shit. It's
Look at Red Dead.
horrible, but like, yeah, it's
Red Dead pretty much
it's
has every
sat-
content descriptor under the sun.
Yeah, Red
So
Dead
does
is also-
And
GTA.
it's the most gorgeous
Yeah.
game I've ever
Red Dead,
seen.
Red Dead has some historical significance to it,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, as does Call of Duty. Well,
Yeah.
not anymore. But
I mean-
back when they covered actual events.
I mean, regardless of what your game, I would argue that like they all do. Like, of course, yeah. Like it's
you could make the argument that something like Postal doesn't, but it does at the
it
same
does
time.
at the same time. Yeah, maybe.
It's dumb as shit, but
Yeah.
it has artistic merit because
Yeah.
they're trying
there
to
are-
they're trying to make a statement. Their statement
Yeah.
might be stupid, but they're trying to make a statement.
There are a lot of games that also use violence as a tool. Like we talked about before, things like Hotline Miami and BioShock and
I was about to say, we
stuff
just did
like
a
that. Like,
3-part or 2-part episode on Super Columbine Massacre. That's
Super,
kind of-
yeah, Super Columbine Massacre RPG, an unrated game, but
Yeah.
art
Yeah,
is
like-
in many forms.
Yeah. The way that the Supreme Court argues stuff is like, is there precedent in the past? If not, are we setting that said precedent right now? Because like if the Supreme Court makes a ruling, a lot of Supreme Court rulings are based on previous Supreme Court rulings.
Yeah.
So like
So this case is going to be referenced in future cases.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The subject of violence in video games never came up before. And the state of California's argument here is all about sexual content. It is all about comparing this shit to porn.
Yeah,
like,
they're-
I made the argument a lot that they're trying to turn video games into something like cigarettes or alcohol. But the funny thing is that it's more of a direct comparison to porn because, like I said, cigarettes and alcohol, there is factual information that those are bad for you. And you need to be... And
They're comparing it to porn, but a lot of the things they keep showing are like those clips are always related to violence.
Well, that's what. But what I'm saying is that they're not trying to turn this into cigarettes and alcohol because cigarettes and alcohol, there is factual information out there that says if
Yes.
you smoke cigarettes, it is worse for your health. If you drink alcohol, it is worse for your health.
Boo-hoo.
Right. Well, and the argument there being that you need to be an adult in order to make the decision to ruin your health, which I am glad to do every day.
I ate a lot of fast food as a kid.
That's not McDonald's got a good lobby. But like the argument here is that like there is no factual evidence that playing violent video games is bad for kids.
Yeah.
There is a lot of theories out there and a lot of parents think it is and a lot of adults think it is, but there's no factual evidence.
And there's no factual evidence that supports what is art.
Yeah, and there's also no factual evidence that necessarily says that watching porn while you're developing is bad for you.
Right, yeah.
But they don't use factual information to
Yeah.
ban porn. They use the fact that like, ew, sex is gross. Don't show it to kids, and that's like the end of it.
Yeah.
That opening FMV cutscene in the first Resident Evil, that's art.
That's just a movie. But yeah, the justices argue that the First Amendment does not and never has included obscenity. But when it was ratified, and there were Supreme Court cases in the past, there's precedent that obscenity is harmful to the development of minors. Violence is not. And we are at a point now where violence is so prevalent in our society that any attempt to restrict access to it could affect trillions of dollars of industries.
Yeah.
You know, every industry, like, there are entire genres of movies that are just based on the fact that violence is allowed. Video games as a whole are based on the fact that violence is allowed. Like I said, you need an enemy and you need to get rid of that enemy, and how do you do it?
Yeah.
You jump on their heads, you shoot them, but they disappear.
Especially the competitive nature of games.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course, yeah.
I mean, I'd still say that nowadays, arguably, video games, because of the range of the way you can express them, have just as much artistic value, if not more, than fucking
Absolutely.
movies or music. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Another thing is that, like,
Then it comes down to like what constitutes a game, and then
this
he's
is
like,
this is up to this is
Fuck!
This is up to the Supreme Court because, again, like I said, if they
all a game.
If they right here, right now say, okay, violent video games are illegal, somebody might attack the movie industry tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then they'll use this case
They're already shaking
that
them.
we're currently arguing as precedent for violence in movies.
Video
being
games
banned.
are clearly entertainment. Oh, excuse
Yeah.
me. Video games are clearly entertainment. So are movies.
What a boring
Yeah.
country this would be. We got rid of all the violence. Real world violence, though. Our country's about that.
That's my shit.
Yeah, no.
Why, we're against that?
Oh.
I mean, this country was founded on real world violence. Just against minorities, so it's okay.
This is a pro-America.
Yes.
Okay.
This is pro-America, Austin. That's why my voice got deeper.
Scared, way scarier, to be honest.
But yeah, like I said, there's a lot of comparisons to porn. Most of this is comparing video games to porn.
You jerk off to both, so that makes sense.
But they bring up the fact that porn is not necessarily illegal because they're trying to prevent kids from learning about sex.
They've
They just think
they've proven that was a good idea.
they think teen pregnancy and whatnot.
Yeah.
They just think that watching it is harmful to minors. So here's the interesting thing that
I have so
I
many
didn't personally know about the
angry
case.
thoughts right now.
The guy from California, the lawyer, outright just flat out says it might be a good side effect, but we are not trying to prevent violence. We are trying to prevent harm to minors. So their worry here is not that a kid is going to learn how to shoot a gun and then go out and shoot other people, like in the cases with like Columbine and other school shootings and stuff like that. They're just worried that violent images could
Harm the kid,
harm
so he
the
eventually
kid's
goes
development
and
so that
buys
they
a
grow
gun.
so that
Exactly,
they,
he counteracted his own point.
No, so that they grow up to be more angry people. Like that's it. They're saying that like
What?
seeing violent images makes it so that you can't deal with the world the way you should. Like it's all about the development of minors, not about it's not about preventing violence, which is what I thought this whole thing was before I did this research. And he's like, "That's a great side effect, sure, but that's not what this is about."
Everybody the fuck?
It absolutely is about preventing violence, because what are you trying to prevent? Like, you're trying to protect their development. What? So they develop because you don't want
country's
them to
image,
grow up and be shitty.
Yeah.
Because you think shitty people are more likely to be violent.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next point actually goes back to the severability thing I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Or in the last episode.
Severe ability.
Severability.
I know. Words are spelled stupid.
It's like that sentence.
So their labeling provision for the law was dropped. Because remember the thing I said in the last episode about like, you can't put anything on packages that's not factual information?
Yeah.
The government can't tell you to put this is a violent video game on your packaging unless you can prove that it's a violent video game, which is impossible to prove.
Can we make a video game and just call it This Is a Violent Video Game?
Yeah, still couldn't prove it, though.
So they actually dropped that part when they appealed to the Supreme Court. And so that comes up because one of the justices is like, I saw you dropped the labeling part of your law since the last appeal. And the guy's like, yeah, well, we thought that the unconstitutional ruling of that was fair. We're just arguing this one. And she goes, why? Wouldn't it be better to label these games and let parents make the decisions rather than just making it flat out illegal for the kids to buy the game?
And then they're like, fuck.
Because,
they're like,
because
"Oh,
the
shit."
information that it's violent helps that parents make the decision more than their kid just saying, you have to buy this for me. And their whole thing is like, well, parents will have to do their own research.
But look at this Postal clip.
But we just want to make it so that parents have to be present for the kids to buy games. And then they get in this whole argument.
You can use a cat as a silencer.
They're like, okay, so you're arguing, and that's a thing in Postal,
That
right?
is a thing in
Okay,
Postal.
God, that game's stupid. But they're trying to make this argument that the kids like. So these kids are going out and buying these games themselves without their parents being there, right? And they're like, yeah, and they're like, and what age range are we arguing about again? And they're like, anywhere from 0 to 18. And they're like, okay, so let's just use the average, like 9 or 10 years old.
Okay.
Where are those kids getting $60? They can't have jobs.
Yeah.
So their parents are
point.
giving them the money. Mm-hmm. Aren't their parents technically already involved in the... Isn't it up for the parents to not just give their kids money, but be like, what are you spending this on?
They're out mowing lawns.
What if they're drug dealers?
Like that.
Then
I wish you were there at that meeting. Just like,
Then they're already violent.
These fucking 9-year-old pimps.
Yeah, then they're already violent. Then you don't have to worry about it. I think you should be allowed, if you're an underage kid, to buy Grand Theft Auto with your well-earned drug money.
If you do the work to get that $60.
Yeah. So this whole law, after a bunch of arguing between a bunch of old people, this whole law essentially boils down to, like, not at all what I thought it was. The whole thing was like, we want to make it illegal for kids to buy games so that they don't learn that guns are cool and then go and shoot people. But that's not the law at all. The law is we want to make it illegal for kids to buy games without their parents' permission.
Forget about access to guns.
Yeah. And
real guns.
we want to make it so that these kids have to be 18 to make that decision for themselves. Otherwise, their parents have to be involved in purchasing.
And we all know they're too stupid.
And it's like, so what the ESRB already does.
Doing. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is all just keeps going around in circles.
You're just making it illegal. You're making it illegal, but you're not putting the punishment for the failures of the ESRB on...
This hearing is a remake.
Yeah, you're an HD remaster. You're not... You're putting the failures on the retailers, which is weird.
Yeah.
This just sounds like the bone to pick from one fucking guy who just stuck to his guns, stuck to his guns that were violent.
Oh, you meant literally.
And took it too far. And they didn't have any fucking ground to stand on.
That's what it sounds
Other
like.
than some fucking fake moral ground.
No,
which doesn't fly.
They got 5 minutes of Postal footage.
So like I said, the way Supreme Court hearings work, one side gets 30 minutes, the other side gets 30 minutes, because they got a lot of cases to hear. So right around this time in our hearings, because I haven't said this, but I'm going kind of chronologic. These are my notes that I took while I was watching the dog video, which is adorable, by the way. But these are my notes that I took while watching the dog video. So the guy from California, he's like, I reserve the rest of my time, which means that he's going to let the guy from the EMA go, and then he's going to come back for his last, I think it was like 5 minutes, and rebut whatever that guy said. Because he's like, I'm getting nowhere with these people, so I'm going to let that guy talk, and then I'm going to spend 5 minutes making fun of his points. Because I know he's going to do that to me.
Wouldn't you always want to go second?
Yeah. Yes, going second is better. But that's the whole point, is that, like, if you're going to sue somebody, you got to go first.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the guy comes out and he says, like, these laws are too vague.
Yeah.
And also, we have plenty of systems in place that give parents the opportunity to take this into their own hands.
Yes.
And I don't think that the government should get involved in parenting.
Parenting, yeah.
Essentially. He says that, like, all of the major console manufacturers out there have parental control systems in place.
Yeah.
The Switch has it, or I guess at the time the Wii
They all
had
have
it. The 360 had it. The PS3 had it. Now the PS4, the Switch, they all have it.
Yeah.
And the argument by the other side
Steam
is...
even.
Yeah, I can't figure out how to unlock my Xbox. If somebody could tell me.
Yeah, they make the point that part of the video package that included the 5 minutes of Postal 2 apparently also included a video that was a YouTube tutorial for kids on how to disable parental controls on the 360. So they're like, kids are smarter than their parents now. So the parents can set up parental controls, but kids are smart enough now to get around parental controls. It's like, well, they're smart enough to get around parental controls, but they're not smart enough to understand that they shouldn't go kill people or get angry.
It's not even always like about their smartness too. Like, it's also awareness. It's like kids are going to be way more up to the now of like how to just purchase games in a way that parents aren't. Like that's the digital thing I was saying earlier. Like the more convenient and easier that gets for kids, it's like pretty easy to obtain that stuff.
A lot of the Supreme Court's arguments against the EMA side of this is that, like I said before, there are studies out there that, air quotes, prove that video games have a tendency to increase violent thoughts and behavior in children. But those studies also analyzed movies, and they also analyzed music and television.
Sports,
and
toys.
more specifically, they found that there is no distinct difference in the effects on behavior between something like Call of Duty and something like Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Like Bugs Bunny whacking somebody over the head with a hammer is just as bad to the development of a child as playing Call of Duty. Because violence is violence. It doesn't matter that they're getting maimed or tortured. I mean, if anything, me and Randy talked about this in the past before, and the thing is, like, if anything, very, very violent video games, maybe not Postal because it's stupid again, but like something like a Last of Us, right? People get brutally murdered in Last of Us.
The
But they
opener alone
show
with
the consequences.
The consequence, yeah.
And
Yeah.
things like Looney Tunes do not show the consequence of that violence.
No.
That opener of Last of Us is an
Arguably,
example
Last
of people
of
who
Us is
think
better
of,
for your
like,
children's development than Looney Tunes.
That's
That's a
what
hot
I'm trying
button
to argue.
guarantee.
Yeah.
There's like all people who just like romanticize the idea of an apocalyptic scenario, and that game straight up opens with the fact of like, no,
Yeah.
it does not glorify any of those ideas at all. It's horrific.
Interesting point made again by the EMA guy is that these studies show that there is indeed harm that can be done, but the harm takes all of your childhood, right? It's like the harm is not done in minutes, it's years. So the guy...
And there's tons of factors.
The guy basically says, like, and it's not every kid, but the guy says that at any minute you can make the argument that it's not like a kid turns on a violent video game and the Call of Duty title screen pops up and all of a sudden he's going to go out and murder. Like, it takes...
Just bust a gun cabinet him right away.
Yeah, it takes years, and at any point the parents are free to intervene in that and just once check up on what their kids are doing.
The argument that Fox News tried to use against Mass Effect about the sex in that game? They're like, you don't just boot the game up and it's just, do you want a fucking alien? Like,
Yeah.
Or they used the opposite argument. They were like, I think it was called the sex box, which was like the name of the thing. And then Jeff Keighley was like, no.
Yeah, the argument here is that parents have ample opportunity to just
be
for
parents.
like 5 minutes, just butt into their kid's life and just be like, and I know we've all been on the other side of that and it's annoying, but my parents did that. They would walk in and I'd be playing GTA and they'd be like, you know, you're not supposed to kill people for reals, right? And I'm like, yeah, totally. And they're
God.
like, dope. Have fun killing hunters.
I got more of my mother like, if you're this angry at it, why are you still playing it?
Yeah, I got that a lot too.
You don't get it!
Shut up, Mom.
Fuck up, Mom. If you're listening to this, Mom, I love you.
If you listen to this, Mom, fuck off. I'm playing them. I'm playing Overwatch no matter how mad I get.
I know my mom listens to this. She's the best.
Or it's not a competition.
Yeah. My mom will beat up your mom.
Yeah, you know. Also, I'm just kidding. I
Our
love
moms
my
would be
mother,
great
obviously.
friends.
Yeah.
But she doesn't. She's not like. She's the kind of who's like, can I get a podcast? Where do I get it? Do I download it? Oh, and I'm like, don't just leave.
That's my dad.
Just know it's going good.
Just send her just tune into NPR. That's totally us talking.
So then the ESA makes the argument that states should not have the right to determine at what age kids are able to absorb this stuff. Like the argument that nobody knows a kid better than their parent.
Yeah.
It should be up to the parents to decide, but to put all these restrictions on the video game industry in order to make that decision for parents when the ESRB is already in place to help parents make the decision and the decision should be left up to them. And a lot of family associations didn't want to hear this one, but like, if your kid is getting access to violent materials because you're not around, like, yes, that's because parents have to work and they can't be around their kids 100% of the time, but it is the parent's job to intervene if they don't want their kids seeing that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah.
I know
You know,
it's like a
being a
weird
parent.
line to walk. You don't want to tell somebody how to raise their children,
Right,
But
yeah.
like, yeah, it is kind of your job to judge whether or not you think this is violent. And
Also, it's going to happen anyway.
yeah,
When I was a kid, I was allowed to play violent video games.
That would
All
explain
I
why you're
wanted,
such a murderer now.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say one thing you're known for: murder.
yeah. And I had cousins come over and play games, play Halo with me, and they weren't allowed to play games. But fuck them, I showed it to them. Or
Yeah.
I guess fuck my aunts and uncles, I showed it to them. And then those kids went home and they wanted to buy Halo, but they couldn't because their parents wouldn't let them. But they still experienced it.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
And now they're murderers because
Yeah.
you saw it one time.
So yeah, like I said, games are no different than Looney Tunes in terms of harmful effects to the development of children. And like I've said a million times before, what are video games? What is art? What isn't art?
How much time do we
What
have?
violence is bad? What violence is good? Obviously, Postal is a violent video game. Is Call of Duty just as bad as Postal?
No.
Is Mario just as bad as Call of Duty?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so where do you draw the line? If you make this a law and you leave it vague enough,
Yeah.
who's to say you lose your office? Somebody else comes in, they're like, I'm tired of these kids playing their Sonics, and then you ban every video game.
Yeah.
Is that all we have to do to get rid of Sonic?
Bring it back up.
Yeah, Sonic will die when the video game industry is but dust.
Tough call.
And there will be sonic dust racers.
And then the argument comes up that they say it's for games with no artistic value. And this tag will only be applied if the violence makes the game lose its artistic value.
What?
Which is just like, I'm sorry, what?
No, here's
How-
the funny thing is that argument came up. I mentioned Bioshock Infinite earlier.
Yeah.
And there were people who, I guess, truly didn't understand the juxtaposition in that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they were like, I don't get it. It looks so bright and colorful, but why is it so violent? And it's just like, you're an idiot. Like, the themes of this thing is
Yeah.
Also, it's
so much
like,
more than
this
you can
is
understand.
The Supreme Court now, you're supposed to be here to battle like with logic as your tools. Like, you can't get here and try to judge what art is. Like, I guess you're supposed to use philosophy to
Well, their whole
argue
their whole argument
logic.
is similar to the argument for porn, which is it's common sense. There shouldn't be a law. You should just look at it and say like, this is too violent, and not make the game that way.
Yeah.
But it's like we know some fucked up game developers who clearly would not think that something was nearly as violent as
NetherRealm.
Yeah,
Hello
like
Games.
the people that make
Talking about Mortal Kombat.
the people that make violent video games wouldn't be like they wouldn't be able to judge what a panel of parents thought. It's the same with the movie industry, right?
Show Doom and Wolfenstein and new ones.
The movie industry, the MPAA is apparently just a bunch of like old people with nothing better to do, like parents and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like movies are easier to edit than games are, so
Yeah.
and they do it for the ESRB anyway. But they want this to be illegal, and they want it to be based on common sense.
Everybody's common
They
sense.
want
the
this
same.
common sense panel of parents to take artistic merit and historical and scientific merit and political merit into account. Like,
Yeah,
what?
this is
We're
really
finding out
getting.
these parents can't even keep their
obtuse.
kids alive from 1700 diseases, and you want them to fucking judge the morality of art?
yeah. The ESA guy he runs out of his 30 minutes, and the guy comes back with his rebuttals, his last 5 minutes, and in the little mirror.
And his last 5 minutes is him just shooting the other guy in the face. I play video games.
And in a weird twist,
That's a good point. Huh?
in a weird twisted mirror to our ESRB 3-parter. Right at the end, our old pal Mortal Kombat comes running back in because he's like, "Well, Postal is obviously." They're like, "Is this?"
I
game
love how they chose the most satirical games possible.
Yeah.
Also,
Is this game covered?
The
Is this
most
game covered?
the
Is this game
fantasy.
covered? And he's like, yeah, no, yeah. And he's like, I don't know. That's up for a jury to decide. All I'm here to tell you is that Postal 2 is bad. And it's like, I could have told you that.
tons of people in 2010 playing Postal.
And one of the
2.
justices comes up and is like, well, Mortal Kombat was a big thing the last time we did all this. Is that included? Is that violent?
It's coming back.
He says, I don't know. I haven't played the game myself. And Justice Scalia, I think, is like, I have a lot of like legal aides that work for me that are all in their 30s that played that game when they were way too young to, and they seem like fine individuals or something like that. And a bunch of
pretty
people
good.
in the background like laugh.
Oh, is that where that laughter
Yeah,
came from?
yeah.
It sounded like a laugh track in the
Yeah.
video. All right. That's funny.
And then I remember this from when this happened. This is my favorite
This came up.
argument. One of the justices says the law applies to violence against humans, right? It says in there, violence against humans. And he goes, yeah. And so she says, okay, so let's say a Star Trek game were to come out where you're just slaughtering Vulcans who are just humans with pointy ears. Is that violent under this law?
Yeah.
And he says, no. So hypothetically,
So people just naturally started photoshopping pointy ears on everything.
yeah. But hypothetically, like if Gears of War didn't have a multiplayer,
That was where that discussion
Yeah.
came up. Yeah.
if Gears of
Where
War
you were
didn't have a
shooting at another
multiplayer
people.
where you could saw humans in half,
Yeah.
that wouldn't have been considered violent because the locusts are not humans.
It was the same with Halo 1 and stuff
Halo,
like that.
yeah.
And Halo 2, like you're shooting at other people in multiplayer, but
Yep.
you're punching aliens with blue blood in the.
Yeah, anything you're fighting aliens or robots is fine, but if you're killing other humans,
I was about to say
not
zombies,
okay.
but I guess they were once humans. So.
zombies are humanoid enough.
Damn.
Yeah.
But put pointy ears on their zombies.
Yeah.
Vulcans.
Vulcan zombies, yeah. But that's where we leave it for the Supreme Court oral arguments. That was November of 2010. It took the Supreme Court about half a year. In July of 2011, the Supreme Court ruled 7-2 in favor of the video game industry. And their reasonings for why they upheld the rulings were the exact same reasons that the judges who ruled in favor of it in the district courts and the state courts gave.
Those other two people were laughed out of office, right?
No.
Oh. Damn.
The interesting thing is there's a lot of interviews with people who voted yes on this who said that, like, California did a bad job wording it, and if it ever comes up and it's worded right, they would support it.
Oh, scary. Okay.
They didn't turn it down because they support video games. They turned it down because they didn't want to improperly amend the First Amendment.
Yeah. We got to get white out. And
Take out the Constitution, just rip that part out and tape a piece over it.
you lick your finger and smear the ankle.
Yeah. Scalia wrote the decision. He compared video games to the Divine Comedy, the book, and said that we might not think that video games have as much artistic merit as something like the Divine Comedy, but video games deserve just as much free speech protection as some of the best literary works of all time. And that in the case of giving parents the ability to police what their children do, the ESRB is doing more than enough right now to give parents that information.
Yeah.
Fucking hero.
Whoa, no.
Wow.
Pump the brakes on that one.
You know what I mean? That's a good quote, though.
Justice Scalia is a trash man.
Yeah.
But
in this case,
Logic prevailed here.
I don't know much about him. Is he like a 9/11 truther or something?
no,
Yeah. That's it.
no, he just sucks.
Yeah. Well, he's a politician.
Yeah, he is very, very pro-life. I think
Politician.
he's real pro-life, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
At least one of his heads is on straight.
Obviously, the video game industry was very happy with the decision.
For the record, I was just saying that I thought that was a good quote.
I know.
That is a good quote. He sucks.
I'm sure.
But yeah, the video game industry was very happy with the decision, obviously. But there were some people that were not happy. Namely, the state of California and all the states that supported them.
Yeah.
And namely, our boy Leland Yee.
Yay!
Who came out and said he took a break between smuggling guns or whatever the fuck he was arrested for to say that he was upset and appalled that they would not let this go into law and that he would be working on drafting a new law that the court would not find unconstitutional.
Or if he's doing that from jail.
But I guess he never found the time to do that before being arrested for being a GTA character or whatever. I think it was like gun smuggling and racketeering or whatever he got arrested for.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for the Supreme Court part of this. We got one last part to go over, but one last note I wanted to say, because I said this in the beginning of the first part, is that this is going to come up again, and I found a lot of articles arguing that this argument needs to be revisited for VR.
Oh, right. It's got an extra dimension.
Yeah.
Means a new argument. But no, that's it, right?
Yep.
Video games are finally free at last, once and for all, right? Once and for all.
Yep.
This was Hot Button. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Nope, because we didn't talk about our good friend Donnie Trump.
Oh, man.
After a shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, which I'm sure you all remember, Trump was looking for a solution to this gun violence that didn't involve gun control because gun lobbies pay him a bunch of money.
Mental health or anything. Yeah.
So he turned on video games. After the shooter was having a history of playing games, which, when are we going to get to the point where that's no longer a thing? Like,
well, games are so normalized at this point that it's like
He was known to have a history of
gonna find a
having
gamer.
eyes and
Yeah.
breathing.
This kid saw a movie once.
He was known for having a history of liking the movie Jurassic Park. All right, me too. Like, they never bring that up, but they're always like, he played violent video games. He's like, yeah, Call of Duty sold like 20 million copies. A lot of people play violent video games.
Yeah.
And also, wasn't he old enough to play them? I don't remember the shooting.
No, he was.
Yeah, he was. So this is all just Trump deflecting, but
What?
Trump held a meeting
Weird.
that included dissenters as well as representatives from the video game industry. I think those people from the video game industry was the lawyer for the ESA, as well as the CEO of ZeniMax, who owns Bethesda, CEO of Take-Two, who owns
GTA,
Rockstar
yeah.
and 2K, and the CEO of maybe Activision
I'm sure.
also.
Call of Duty.
Yeah. And
Man, it's all cyclical, ain't it?
wait, it's about to get a little more cyclical because in the running theme of bringing up every previous episode of Hot Button that we've done, the people prepared a clip for Trump to watch. And once again, they reached out and found the most violent video games they could possibly find.
Yeah.
And this clip included a lot of Call of Duty and a lot of Mortal Kombat, but more specifically, an uncut clip of No Russian.
For more on the Russian, please check out Hot Button episode 9.
Yeah.
I love it, dude. This whole topic is just like a greatest hits of our previously
Yeah,
covered
it really
topics.
is.
It's great. Also, I totally recommend that everybody watch that compilation because it is on YouTube.
Yes,
and it
IGN
is so
hosted it.
blunt and dumb.
Yeah.
It's just like it's just such a random and poorly edited
There's
montage of just the most out of context clips of out of date
There's
violent
one
games.
clip in there where they show Dead by Daylight.
Oh yeah,
You remember that?
Yeah.
And they show the killer picking up a cop
Puts him
by
on a
his
hook,
collar, and he
yeah.
puts him on a hook. But that game is so shitty that
Yeah, it looks like
there's
crap.
there's no texture for the pipe going through and making a hole in his body. So his
Yeah.
model just clips through a
Yeah.
pipe, and then he's just like, "Oh no!" And like that's the whole fucking thing.
They show clips
it's
of
so bad.
They show clips of the VAT system from Fallout,
Yep.
but the guy misses the first few crits, so it's just like this wonky ass thing of these character models. Yeah, and then eventually the head explodes. Like, yeah.
slow
So
motion.
you can find a million articles out there about how this meeting went, and everybody's like, "Oh, Trump was so civil, and he was just trying to listen to people."
Those two words don't.
Whatever.
He also doesn't give a fuck about video games.
No,
Yeah.
of course
Whether
not.
they're violent or not.
Yeah, but then a bunch of more shootings happened, unfortunately.
Always relevant.
Yeah, and a few months ago, in December of 2018,
Which mass shooting was this?
I think it was just a culmination
I
of all
know.
of them. The Trump administration called for the ESRB to review its policies and
Look
fix
how recent this goes.
fix their shit, basically.
The ESB was like, okay. And
Then the ESRB responded by saying, "Our 2018 research shows that 83% of parents are aware of ESRB ratings. 73% regularly
Not a lot
check
of
the
kids
ratings
grow up.
prior to making a purchase." That said, the ESRB is always looking at potential enhancements to the rating system as the industry evolves and parental demands change. While the ESRB rating system is a great way to get information about what's in a game, we also recommend that parents set parental controls for all their family's consoles, handheld video game devices, computers, smart devices. Of course, we also encourage parents to take their time to talk with their children about what kind of games are appropriate and why.
And you'll find out that that's actually pretty easy.
Yeah, exactly.
Who wants to talk to their kids? Kids suck.
But I think that's it, right?
That's all quality
That-
advice.
That is the story so far. Keep in mind that ended in December of 2018.
By the time this
So
airs,
this
there'll be
is-
another
yeah.
fucking hearing.
So this is not over. But that is where we
But
will leave our
like
story
you
today.
mentioned, I don't know if it was this episode. I think it was this one or the previous one. But that this argument will at least be easier to make each time because they can keep referencing
Yes.
prior
All the times they won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's it.
meetings.
Technically, that brings our 5-part saga on the ESRB to a close. Woo!
What do we learn?
Tired, yeah.
We learned that parents are bad at their jobs.
Okay.
No, they just want to pawn off the job.
And when they get called out for being bad at their jobs, they want somebody to blame who's not themselves.
So
And that the
guns bad,
Yeah.
violence good. Question mark.
The government
they-
has nothing better to do.
Video games are art.
No,
do you
we learned that violence and sex are weird, and people
And
should,
that's it, guys.
kids should just sit in a box and stare at a wall and not watch any television,
And then they'll be
or
fine.
ever go on the internet.
Yeah.
They'll be
Don't
okay.
own a cell phone.
And don't talk to anybody else because other kids are all deviants.
Yeah,
and
that
they're
could
gonna
lead to bad situations.
Yeah.
Trying is the first step towards failure.
Yeah, I believe actually DMX can sum it up. In one of his songs, he said, "You really want to stop my people," he doesn't say my people, "from trying. Stop my people from dying." That's what he says. And you gotta fill in the blanks in your head.
All right, that's gonna do it. Let's do some plugs. I'll take them this time.
Yeah,
can
you
fo-
hear that? We can leave.
Oh, wait, it was backwards. No, you really want to stop people from dying. Stop people
Stop
from
people
trying. Yeah.
Damn. What a poet
Yeah.
he was.
Oh.
I was about to say, and don't forget his other famous lines like, My favorite website, there's a website
What?
called isdmxinjail.com. when you open it up, it just has his face and it says yes or no, and that's it. That's the entire website.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Wait, give
Didn't
us
he
an
fake being
update.
he faked being an FBI agent at one point?
Did
that
he?
Was, yeah, that was one of the things he got arrested for.
That's awesome.
Is DMX
I think so.
jail.com.
I think he's like faked being a federal
DMX
agent.
is not in jail.
Picture
Yeah.
The website is going strong. Yeah, but by the time this airs, though, this could be different.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, everybody listening, go to isdmxinjail.com
And tweet us when this drops.
At the very
And
bottom
tweet
of the
us an
page,
update.
12519. He's a free man. Did DMX go back to jail? Question mark. Hit me up. And there's just a Twitter link. Assumably the guy who funds this website.
Yeah.
I hope he has
Right.
a Patreon.
When this episode airs, if DMX is in jail, you can tweet us at Hot Button Cast. Hit us up on Instagram, Facebook at Hot Button Cast. And in order to hear our future episodes, you can like and subscribe and rate or whatever the fuck they call it on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and anywhere else fine podcasts may be downloaded.
Podcast.
Posticles.
Yeah, end it on that. They can visualize it.